Good morning. Keep forgetting to turn my mute off. How's everybody doing this morning?
Thank you.
Good, good. Well, this morning I am going to tell you a story. I've used this story many times in my classes in talking about ethical practices and principles. This one happens to be a real life story that I experienced in a design office, a very reputable design office that I worked in that was actually one of my first jobs and first real jobs in graphic design. And it was a designer that worked in LA, right on Wilshire Boulevard. Very reputable. I had mentioned him before in the sense that he had won many awards in graphic design and advertising. I was very, very lucky to have worked for this person. His name was Ray Engel, and he ran a design firm called Ray Engel and Associates. He did a lot of corporate work for IBM, Union Oil, just, a lot of well-known companies. And SeaWorld, we designed the original, not the original, well, yeah, it was like one of the original SeaWorld logos, the Shamu whale, that they have since redesigned. And in fact, we were just in San Diego this past weekend, and I saw the logo. And it always reminds me of that experience of being hired. I was hired at the time that logo was, he won the award to design that logo. And so that was a big project in my first few weeks at Ray Engel and Associates. And we worked on that logo for probably 6 months, about a half a year. And it was just jumping right into a huge corporate project. And I was right out of school, just entirely inexperienced, had no idea of what the real world was about, and learned very fast through working for Ray that what graphic design was about, and the pressures and the expectations and all of that. And I was kind of, just a newbie, young 20, I don't know, I want to say a 25-year-old working in my first job, getting my first real paycheck. And, so I was very gullible. I was very, I didn't complain at all. I just listened. I just learned. And he taught me probably more things about this business than anyone that I've ever worked for. We all have kind of our first experiences in real jobs, and this was a real job because this was my career. And when I started working for him, I envisioned myself as, working for him forever. I mean, back then, when you got a job, a lot of times, it was a permanent job, and maybe I would work, for him for 20 years, who knows? But he definitely had the qualifications. He definitely was doing the work that I was impressed with. I mean, impressed with. I mean, I'm just a kid out of school. I mean, I'm going to be impressed with pretty much anything that anybody does that's willing to pay me. So, I wasn't really picky. But when I heard things like Union Oil, IBM, SeaWorld, I mean, my eyes, I went home and I told my dad, I said, these are some of his clients. And my dad was going, whoa, I mean, and my dad knows absolutely, he knew absolutely zilch about graphic design. And he goes, wow, that sounds like a pretty good place, So, yeah, I was really excited. Anyway, I'm going to jump into this story because it's a long story. So sit back, go grab yourself a cup of coffee because this is this is a long story, and but it's one that I'm going to pose a discussion question to you. And I'm gonna actually, normally the discussion questions that I post are just things that I just want you to write a paragraph or so about, a sentence or two about. But this one here, I'm gonna ask you to write something a little more in depth. And I know, Cindy, you're great at that. You always write some very in depth responses. Ruben, you guys are good at that. And the discussion question is going to be over this story that I tell you this morning. And it's a true story, and everything that happened. Now, also remember that this was I would say 1981. And in order to fully kind of understand this story, I mean, you are going to interpret this story in 2021 mentality. But you have to understand that this is 1981 kind of business practices, the way people did business back then. And I'm going to tell you right now that there were a lot of things that were much different than what we do today. In every way, shape, and form. I mean, from the way people communicated with each other to what was politically correct and what was not politically correct. And back then, there was no such word as political correctness. Okay, so, we've come a long way since those days. But business is still run the same way. And I'm telling you that from someone that's, 63 years old, that has been in this business for well over 30 years. And I have to say that business is still run the same. The way we communicate with each other, the way the forms that we have to fill out and all of that are different. But deep down inside, in the back rooms where no one's talking, when only businessmen and women are talking about things, it's still the same way. Now, the story that I'm going to tell you, the discussion is going to be what your opinion of this is. And it poses a possible ethical question of whether this was ethical business practice or not. Mm-hmm. So that's what I want you to comment on. Okay, I'm going to get a sip of coffee here before I start. Okay, let me set this up for you. We had just, and when I say we, our office, we had just acquired the Union Oil. Now, you all know Union Oil, right? Union 76, the gas station, the oil company. One of the biggest oil companies on the West Coast. And back then it was called 76. And then they changed their name later to Union Oil Company of California. When I first started working, when I got hired, I knew that Ray had that account. And the account that he was working with, there's several divisions at Union Oil. There's the oil and gas division. There's the geothermal steam division. There's, about 5 or 6 different divisions at Union Oil, corporate divisions. And he was working with geothermal steam, and he was doing work for them, brochures and, a lot of graphic design for them, corporate graphics. But what he really wanted was the annual report. And you guys all familiar with what an annual report is to a Fortune 500 company or a public company, right?
I've heard the term before.
Yeah.
Is the accounting for the year, right?
Yes, exactly. If you're a public company, on have stock, issue stock, uh, you have to release to your shareholders every year an annual report, which talks about basically it's a report on your assets and liabilities. Okay, what you've done, your profits, it's a business expense sheet really. There's two parts to an annual report. There's the beginning, which is mostly, kind of the glossy photos and the, stories of what the company's up to and what they're doing. And then there's the back part, which are all the financials. And they're basically spreadsheets of, all of their expenses and liabilities and the profit margin that they made. Okay. Anyway, rather than get into the actual contents of the annual report, Ray wanted to design that. Now, back then, annual reports were the Cadillac of graphic design pieces for a graphic designer. If you were a design firm, a corporate design firm, you wanted annual report accounts because those accounts brought in literally hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of revenue for your company. I don't know how much he charged Union Oil for the annual report, but I'm going to assume that it was somewhere to the tune of, maybe 200,000 plus in design fees.
Damn.
So you can see where, designers were all out there trying to get, Fortune 500 company annual reports to design. Because back then, corporations did not have in-house art departments. They farmed out their graphics to independent graphic design firms all over the country, all over the city. And LA, being one of the biggest cities, in the country, had some just high-end design firms out there. So anyway, Ray wanted the annual report. And so because he was doing work with geothermal steam, he felt that he had an in, with corporate. And the annual report is different than the other divisions. It's kind of like the division. And so he kind of gotten a meeting with Barry Lane. Barry is the executive marketing director of Union Oil. And he got that meeting because he got recommendations from geothermal steam from that division. And he sat down with Barry and he said, look, I've been doing work for, divisions at Union Oil, and I would like to bid on this annual report. So Barry said, fine. And we proposed, we bid out, and we did a comp of what an annual report, would look like. And we proposed it to Barry Lane. Now, Barry Lane is someone that knows graphic design, okay? He's dealt with some of the top design firms in the country in much of his career. So it's not someone that, you're presenting to that doesn't know anything about design. Well, Barry is, he was like a, 6'3" big guy, 6'3", Armani suit, horn rimmed glasses kind of guy. And he really had a presence. I mean, when I first met Barry Lane, it was like, wow, this guy's like the president of the United States. That's how he came off. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, we went through this bidding process, and Ray comes back to the office one day, and he just says, he looks at us, and there were only two of us working in the office, myself and this other gal named Debbie. And Ray used to teach at Art Center in Pasadena, and Debbie was one of his students, aspiring students, so he hired her. So he comes in the office and he says, you guys, we are going out to dinner tonight. I'm treating. And so after work, we went out and we had dinner at this steakhouse. And he didn't tell us anything, and we were all kind of wondering, what's going on? What's going on? He's so happy today. And Ray was a really hard guy to work for. So he takes us out to dinner and he tells us that we got the annual report. He said he got a call from Barry today, and we are going to be doing their annual report for next year. And so he tells us, he says, and I wanted to get you guys over the next week or so, I'm going to get you prepared for doing this annual report. Obviously, we had never done an annual report before, but Ray had. He had done annual reports before. So basically, what he was trying to tell us is that this is going to be an experience that you have never had in your life. And there's going to be a very high expectation in terms of what we do for Union Oil. So we are going to, he says, I'm running a very tight ship here when it comes to the annual report. He said, everything from how we answer the phone if Union Oil called to, any information that was going to be passed between us and, Union Oil, what the do's and don'ts were going to be. So anyway, we had this dinner. It was great. We were all set up. So anyway, again, long story short, and it's not really short, but the first thing was to meet Barry Lane. Now, Ray had a very small office off of Wilshire Boulevard. An established office, not too bad. And I actually there is a video of me in the office, the back of my head, but yeah, I'll explain that later, but I'll show you that video later after I tell you the story. So Barry was going to come to the office, and normally Ray would go to Unical. And I'm sorry, it was Union Oil Company of California. Then they changed their name to Unical. Sorry. Yeah. And so Barry was going to come, and he prepped us on the day he was going to come. He told us to dress up, to be, clean up our desks and all the back area. I mean, we literally wiped it down, and we were ready for this introduction. And he says, all I'm going to do is bring them into the back. I'm going to introduce you guys. We're going to chat for a few minutes, and then I'll take them into my office, and we'll, we'll discuss business. Okay, so that's, I don't know. Have any of you guys ever seen the TV show or the series Mad Men? It was on AMC a while ago. It was a series about an advertising agency.
I've seen bits and pieces, but I never
Bits
really
and
watched.
pieces of that, yeah. The head guy was this guy, Don Draper, and he was this really kind of handsome, Armani suit type guy. Anyway, so Barry comes in, and he just reminded me of this guy named Don Draper, in that show, Mad Men. And he comes in the back, and, all of his 6'3" presence, and Ray introduces him, and Ray is beaming from ear to ear, I mean, he almost has this like fake smile on. We could all see that Ray was just like totally ass kissing this guy from the start. And we all shook his hand, and Barry, we started talking about the annual report a little bit. And I noticed one thing that happened. And Barry Lane was very much in command of this discussion. He was saying, oh yeah, he goes, Ray, it's going to be great. We're going to have a great, I'm looking forward to this relationship. He goes, we got a lot of things we got to talk about. There's a lot of things I want to do with this annual report. He said, now we finally have a good designer doing it. And so, I could tell right away that the man in control of this annual report was not going to be Ray Engel. It was going to be Barry Lane. Now, as a designer, it's very important, and you've heard me talk about this before, about how you need to take control of a project. And yet, when you have a person, and many of your clients are going to be very intimidating, and they're going to tell you exactly what they want. Not only that, if you start, getting good clients, chances are the people that are your clients are going to be probably as old as your father. And I'm not kidding. And so how do you do that? How do you control someone that's twice your age? I mean, just that alone is almost an impossible feat. So you end up kind of being just, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, we'll do that. Yes, you want that? Yes, we'll do that, right? And yet as a designer, you cannot do that. I mean, yes, you can do that, but you want to have control to the point where you can move that project in the direction that you want to move it. Because after all, you are the designer. They are the marketing director. Now, yeah, Barry knew some things about design, but he doesn't know about design. You know about design because you went to school for that. So that was the predicament, and we all saw that. And so after Barry left, Ray got us in the back and he met with us and he said, he said, so you now have met Barry Lane. And he says, so I'm going to tell you something. We are not going to be able to design this annual report the way we want to this year. And he said, it's because, he is going to control this. And he says, I'm not going to fight him on a lot of things. I'm not going to disagree with a lot of things, even though I do. I will bring up my opinion. But in the end, he's going to control it. But he said, if we hold on to this account, he said, in 2 years, it'll be ours. Okay. So that year went on, okay, and we did exactly what Barry wanted. I mean, he would come to the office and he'd say, oh, Ray, we're going to use this picture and we're going to put this here and I want this type over here and maybe we should say something like that. What do you think? Huh? No? Nah. I think we should do this, right? I mean, he wasn't really asking us for our... we ended up being the production studio for Barry Lane, the designer. And that happens a lot, when you're dealing with clients. They're hiring you as a designer and you kind of look up and you go, well, why did you even hire me? I mean, you're not letting me design anything. Okay, so we did it and Barry was happy. It came out the way he wanted to. The printing was first class. We used George Rice and Sons in Boyle Heights, and they were one of the premier annual report designers in LA. We used Andreessen Typographics, which is the best typesetter in the city. And everything worked out fine. I mean, there were I've never been through so many revisions in my life. I'm telling you. We had about 60 pounds of type that we had to paste down and unpaste and paste down and unpaste. I mean, literally. And just managing the amount of changes was tremendous. I mean, we had to come up with an organizational system just to manage the changes so that we knew what the latest changes were and we weren't looking at some of the changes that happened 2 days ago. Okay, so the second part of this now, the second year, we're into the second year of the annual report. And Ray suggests to Barry that he invites Barry to come on his boat. Now, Ray owns a Columbia yacht, literally a 60-foot yacht that he bought many years ago for a really good price. Ray is a sailor. He's an ex-Navy guy and a Navy vet, and he loves his boating, and he bought this yacht, and they only made supposedly like 25 of them in the world. And he lived in the Marina del Rey, and he has it parked in the the marina. And he goes yacht racing every Wednesday night. So I remember every Wednesday night because he used to leave early on Wednesday. And so he invites Barry to go boating with him. And so Barry accepts, and they go on one of these Wednesday night yacht races. And it's him and Barry on the boat. And he says, Barry, he says, you don't have to know anything about sailing. He says, I'll take care of everything, but you could help me out. I mean, you could, I'll show you what you can do. So anyway, they go yacht racing. Ray comes back the next morning, and we said, how did it go? And he goes, oh, it was great. Barry loved it. And so this became a regular thing. And so every Wednesday they would go yacht racing and Barry would go. And next thing you know, Ray comes in the door and he goes, hey, he says, he chuckles and he says, yeah, Barry says that he wants to buy a boat now. Now, Barry knew how to sail a little bit, but, this guy is like super fat cat rich, right? And so he could buy a boat in a drop of a dime. So Barry is like wanting to buy a boat. So, and Ray would joke and he says, "Man, this guy doesn't even know how to tie a knot, let alone buy a boat." So, anyway, and that was Ray's attitude with him the whole time. This whole relationship was it almost felt like he befriended Barry, and at the same time he kind of just was always talking about him, in a not so flattering light. It's like I remember when Barry used to come in and say, "Well, we're going to do this. We're going to use this picture." After Barry left, Ray would come in the back and he would just shake his head like, "Man, this guy doesn't know anything about photography," stuff like that. So anyway, what happened is that Barry was on Ray's boat. And, that the minute you step on a man's boat, they are the captain of that ship, no matter who you are. Okay, I don't care if you're the president of the United States. When you set foot on my boat, I am the captain. And so it was easier for Ray to kind of take control of that situation. What Ray did was say, "Barry, go grab that, go tie that up, go whatever." I don't know nothing about sailing, but Ruben, I'm sure you do.
You got it.
Yeah. And so, and Barry would follow Ray's command. It was like, "Okay, you're the captain." And so it was easier now for Ray to have this kind of tone with Barry because he took him on his boat and because, of this situation. When Barry came in the office, we started noticing in the second year of the annual report that Ray was kind of more in control, in saying, "Nah, we're not going to use that photo. That's no good. I mean, look at the color of this. Let's use this one." And then Barry would kind of look at Ray and go, "Yeah, okay, I think you're right. Yeah, let's use that one." And so the tide was kind of shifting. In addition, Barry did buy a boat and took Ray with him to buy it. And then the next thing you know, Barry's calling the office constantly asking about, certain things that he wanted to buy for his boat, like rails and bells and, all those things. I mean, once you get into boating, I guess, there's umpteen things that you want to buy. And Ray would sit there and say, "Don't buy it. Don't buy it. I'll buy it for you. I know where you can get a good deal. I know what's a good one, whatever." And so literally in the course of 1 year, I saw this whole relationship just flip-flop. And we all kind of knew what was happening. I mean, was Ray really, this guy's friend? I don't think so. I think this was a manipulation that he was doing to gain control of the annual report. Ray, in his heart, was a designer. He was a designer, and had a very passionate designer as far as having reasons why he wanted things the way he wanted things. I mean, Ray was a guy that if he told you, "We're going to use this photo," he wouldn't just say that. He would say why we're going to use this photo. And he would explain the color of the photo, the impact of the photo, the size and the cropping of how it fits better in this space. I mean, this guy was a scientist when it came to graphic design. And to this day, there was no other person that I learned more from. And what I respected from Ray is the fact that not only did he tell you what to do, okay, I mean, everyone's going to tell you what to do, but at least he told you why. And he gave you a logical reason why. And a lot of times it was hard to argue with that. There were some things that I didn't like personally, style or whatever, and we're all going to have our differences. But he was always a big stickler of explaining why. And he used to say that if you're having a hard time convincing your client of what you want to do, the reason you're failing is because you're failing to make a logical case for it. You will never sell anything based on, "I think that looks better." Okay? You're going to sell it because it's functional, it works, and it looks better. So he was a very big kind of Bauhaus fundamentalist. Form follows function.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so we did the annual report the second year, and we got to do a lot of things that we wanted to do. And when I say we, I mean not me, but Ray Engel. We just followed his lead. And that that annual report went on for all the way up until the point that I left, that I resigned. And my experience with that design firm was kind of this love-hate relationship. I learned more, and I stayed there a lot. Towards the end, I worked there for 3 years, and in my last year, I stayed there only because I wanted to learn from this guy who is, I consider, my mentor. I didn't really like a lot of the things that he did. I didn't like his tone. I didn't like the way he talked to us and he reprimanded us. I thought there was a much, more tactful way of handling things. He forced us into being really strong and forceful with our vendors. So if back in those days, we didn't set type on a computer. We had to have typesetters set the type and send it to us in sheets that we would paste down on boards. And if they made mistakes, we would have to call the typesetters and have them fix it and send us back the revised version, especially if it was their fault. And he used to really get on us to be forceful with them, because his whole thing is that if you don't, if you're not forceful with them, they're going to take you for a ride. They're going to take advantage of you. So if you don't say, we need it like now, then you won't get it until tomorrow afternoon. So you just have to deal with people that way in this business. Now, that was very uncomfortable for me to have to do that, to have to be that way. But I realize, again, what I want to emphasize is that this is the 1980s, okay? I mean, I don't think people would talk to each other that way today. But back then, this was a dog-eat-dog world. And in this field, in graphics and advertising and in printing, the way you got things done is you were very forceful in making your case. And it worked. It really did. It really worked. But it took a while for you to gain the respect of, I gained a lot of respect, me, 26-year-old kid, I gained a lot of respect only because of the person I was working for. Okay, they knew I was working for Ray Engel, so even though I was talking, I mean, they wouldn't give me the time of day if I walked in there by myself. But because I was working for Ray Engel, I mean, that was like, wow, okay, John, we'll get it to you. We'll have a courier send it right over. It should be there in 2 hours. That kind of treatment. And that's something that, I don't know. I mean, kind of felt good, here I am just, I mean, one of the things that really made me feel good was Ray was not a awards type person. In other words, he didn't go to award shows, and even though he got lots of awards, he never really wanted to go to the awards dinner or the Art Directors Club of Los Angeles meetings that they always had once a month. And he would give me his pass, and he would say, here, John, you go. You represent me. So I don't know how many times I used to go to these Art Directors Club meetings, and they were like downtown in the Sheraton or the Bonaventure. And there would be all the designers from LA and agency art directors and stuff, and we'd all put a name tag on us and, have drinks and stuff, and then there would be a speaker for the evening. And the minute I put that tag on and it said John Kawa, Ray Engel and Associates, I mean, people were coming up to me and they were going, oh, so you work for Ray. How is that guy? I mean, he knew everybody in town. And here I am, some flunky, production artist working for him, and just because I have his name on my badge, people are actually, acknowledging me. That's the kind of guy he was. But he was a very humble person in that respect. Anyway, there's many things, many negative things that I would not, even want to talk about and should not talk about to you guys. But that is a situation, and that that I wanted to a story that I wanted to tell you, and the ethical question in that was just simply, was that an ethical thing to do? And in the discussion question that I posted, I've explained in more detail what I'm going to ask you to discuss. And that was something that I struggled with as I was working for him. And Debbie and I, my coworker, we talked a lot about that, because we would go out to lunch together and we would kind of question the motives and the reasoning behind, that kind of relationship. Um, you know, there's two ways to think about it, and when you're responding to this, there is no really right answer to this. I think these are one of the questions that dilemmas that you might come across in your own business. You're always going to be coming across a point where you're going to be faced with an ethical question. Should I do this? Is this the right thing to do? And you're going to be wavering back and forth in terms of what good business is. What is the definition of good business? Or what is, you know, is this right? You know, and that kind of piggybacks on what I was saying in the last session about kind of your morality. Your base of what you think is right and wrong. Um, and a lot of times it conflicts with the rights and wrongs of business, of doing business. I don't know if you're a Godfather a fan of that movie.
My dad watched it like once a day. I've seen it millions of times.
Yeah. I same with me. Same with me. And there is a famous quote in that movie where, um, Michael Corleone says, "It's not personal; it's strictly business."
That also came out in You Got Mail. Did you ever see that movie?
No, I
Okay,
never did.
so it's two people who have a bookstore, the girl and the guy, and it's like a love story. But he's insta chatting her, so they don't remember what the Godfather said. She's like, "What does the Godfather say? Not business, personal, but it matters."
It's not personal, but it's strictly business.
That story definitely it was it gave me undertones of while I was in the military because
Yes.
I'm not saying that I am a schmoozer or a schmoozy, but when I met my captain for the first time, I was laughing at all of his jokes. Making everything he said was the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. And the same thing with my bosses. It's definitely a tricky one because it kind of toes the line of like, is this fake or is this real? Like, how could you tell? And I'm of the mindset that these people, they'll do the same thing to you if you don't if you don't. So I bought that guy who bought the boat after I forget his name.
Barry Lane.
Yeah, Barry. He was in the situation. Roles were reversed in Fortune 500 in corporate America. That's how the game is rolled. Like, hey, you're my friend now. I don't care about you, but you're my friend. You're a person that I talk to, and it's a very disassociated reality.
Right.
So I think that was a pretty interesting little question. Quick, interesting question you asked. It makes you think.
Well, Ray always used to, and Cindy, yeah, I know you have something to say, so very quickly.
No,
Ray was something that would always emphasize about being in control of design. He was a firm believer that we as designers are not just artists. We are thinkers. You hire us for our ability to solve problems by using art and graphics to do so. So don't treat us like we're just an extension of your brain, that we're just your arms, and that we are great artists and we can do whatever you want us to do. And he was very animate about that. And he used to grill that in us every day about how we are. I mean, he really used to build us up into thinking that we are somebody, you know? Graphic designers have always been kind of like, ask the average person on the street what a graphic designer does, and the first thing that they're going to say is, "Oh, you guys are good at drawing, huh?" Or "You guys are artists. You guys are good at art," right? They never say, "Oh, you guys are some of the greatest problem solvers ever." And that's what we deserve, because that's what we do. Mm-hmm. So he was always trying to make that case. And obviously Barry Lane was kind of, very disrespectful, maybe unknowingly, but in the sense of, you're just going to do what I say. Yeah, Cindy.
I had two, I guess before I got to Platt in 2006, 2005, mm-hmm. I was working for corporate. I was a mortgage assistant. Mm-hmm. So I had a boss that was like very Navy, and he had gone to military. But I mean, usually those guys are really nice, but this guy was really like, you have to do this, you have to do that, that kind of stuff. And so that triggered me to go back to school with Platt, and I became a graphic designer. Mm-hmm. Right after I got out of Platt, I had the nicest boss who taught me everything that I know about graphic design. Mm-hmm. She was the nicest. She was like, I don't know, it doesn't really have anything to do with it, but I just wanted to share with you guys. But she was just like, "No, sweetie, you can do this." And maybe because I was a girl and I was young, and she was just like, "Do this," and all my clients that would come in that she would bring in all this business, because she was so nice and so talented. But she was just like, "So Cindy's going to take care of you guys." And she would just let me do the whole thing for the meet and greets and stuff like that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Super nice. And I fell in love with the mom and pop shops, the crack in the wall shops. So after they closed, because they went to Ohio, because I was living in Utah at the time. So they moved to Ohio, so I couldn't keep on going with them, but I went into libraries for graphic design. Mm-hmm. That kind of, well, I'm just saying, corporate and like mom and pop shops are so different. Mm-hmm. They work them differently. And I can imagine how Barry was the type that I worked for the corporate side. Mm-hmm. And Ray must have been kind of like her. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. And I think there's a corporate culture that just, I think you work so, you work so long in this culture that pretty soon it's the norm. It's the way everybody is. It's, it's just the way of life in that situation. And, but, when you get down to the human level, personal relationships, I mean, these are the ones that we cherish. I mean, the old adage, they say it's not about what somebody did for you, it's about how they made you feel. And I think, but actually, I think now in this, younger generation of business and graphics, even in graphic design and all other businesses, I think there's much more attention to, these type of relationships, rather than the, you're going to do it the way I say, or, my way or the highway type thing.
Or maybe it was the lawsuits, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of that too. And everyone's being very careful.
I definitely remember my first job at this bank. It was just bad. Like, the tone was bad. The office politics were just, I mean, I learned a whole lot, and I'm happy. Mm-hmm. So I just went with the flow. But I remember it was just kind of like, you make sure that the toner's right. And I was,
Mm-hmm,
why are you
mm-hmm.
screaming at the front desk? It's just, it's not a big deal. But like everybody has a job like that, I think.
Yeah, and there's a delicate balance, especially if you're managing people. If you ever get into the position where, you have employees underneath you, I mean, things have to get done, and you could be the nice guy, but, like a lot of times, if things aren't getting done, it's on your watch, and so you're responsible. So yeah, I just think that, like I said, now I really want to emphasize that this was the 1980s. I mean, this was the way business was being conducted. And it was probably even more ruthless in the 70s and 60s uh, than it was in the 80s. And as each decade goes on, we start learning that, this is not, might not be the best way to go about doing things. But no, I love to hear all of your stories, please. If you have
I
any.
feel. I mean, I told you about my grandfather's company, A. George Dag. Well, I mean, they've been in business for over almost 70 years now, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a international business, international name, all the good stuff. And there's this business called C.R. Lawrence. This is a huge. It's like bigger than Fortune 500. Like the owner, the previous owner named Don Freeze. I feel like all rich people have really weird, elaborate names. Don Freeze, like tall, like really tall white dude, and uh, he was trying. He's for years he's been trying to buy my grandfather's business.
Mm-hmm.
Years just for the name, and
Mm-hmm.
but like when it comes to like that idea of being associated by name, like I've been to C.R. Lawrence and I had to talk to Don Freeze a couple times, and this guy's like he's like 67 years old and he's been in the business for forever, but
Mm-hmm.
just because of the fact that I was associated with Diak, uh, he was like, always nice to me, and I would always make sure I would get like preferential treatment with the throughout the whenever I would go there because of the fact that I had that name, and even also while I was in the Navy, I'm a definite believer of if you have weight, throw it around. Sometimes it gets to get some work done. I don't want to do it, but like especially when there's a job to be done and there's a certain way you like to be done, and I mean, not every situation's like that, but like sometimes, I mean, I was the equivalent of a sergeant when I was in the Navy,
Mm-hmm.
so
Well,
like sometimes
what do
you
you
gotta
guys
throw.
do? What do you guys do in your business? Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, it's we they make showcases and like metal extrusions like okay, have you ever been to like Costco
Yeah.
and they have
Like
those jewelry case
displays?
every single Costco that the jewelry case is my dad's that's my
So
dad makes those.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
Isn't
Cool.
the
that what this
jewelry, and they also do like when you go to doctor's office they have those like glass doors where they have
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they make those all I mean everything that has like a partition post and whatever
Oh,
make
okay.
everything like extrusion and it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing too crazy. It's what it is. Is it's how my grandpa works. Is
Yeah, yeah.
it's good products. They don't buy Chinese steel,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, just make good work. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but yeah, it's like it's definitely that idea of schmoozing up to people and throwing your weight around is especially in corporate America it works. You
Right.
know,
Well,
and
I can attest to the fact that my career was built on that first job at Ray Engel. I mean, once I put that on my resume, I got my next job, fairly quick. They knew that, I mean, there were
yeah,
3 or 4 employees down the line after I worked, for Ray that actually knew him or heard of him. I mean, all you have to do is just open up your portfolio and put a SeaWorld logo in there and they go, whoa, who did you do this for? You know, I didn't design it, but I worked on it, and so that was okay to do. I had asked Ray, when I left, can I use the SeaWorld logo in my portfolio and say that I was the production artist on this? And he said, sure. He said because that's what you did,
yeah,
so you deserve that. But don't say that you designed it. And I said, no, I'm not going to say I designed it. But yeah, I've told students ever since I started teaching. One of the you know, one of the biggest recommendations I've always said is to work for a good company if you can. Get in for a good company, to a good company, someone that has a reputation, someone has a probably I said that because it happened to me. You know, we all kind of give advice based on our own experience, and that's what happened to me, and that's what kind of made my career, you know, take off to the point where, you know, it was easier and easier to get work based on, you know, you'll hear that in the entertainment industry, right? Once you do a movie, then you get the next movie and the next movie, and pretty soon, you know, you know, really starts rolling for you. But you know, I on the other hand, I think the benefits of that is you get to work for, you know, a company that is doing good work. You get to be around people that are doing good work. You get to you know, experience, you know, all of the clients and how they do things and the process, and you learn from that. If you're ever going to do this on your own, it's a great, you know, foundation for how to start. And you know, I don't know. I've always wanted to have my own business. If you asked me that in college, what my future would be, I would say one day I'm going to have my own business, and you know, my name's going to be on the door. Never happened to me. Never happened until, you know, much later when a freelance wedding photography business actually became, you know, and I did a few graphic design stints, but I never had an office. I never, you know, my name was never up in lights. You know, I never had a big design office and hired a whole staff. I work for people. That's my entire life. I worked for people, and I was happy. And here's another thing that he told me that I always took to heart. He said, what do you want? You know, you're always going to get this. What do you want to be in life? You know, again, I was 25 years old. He'd had me in his office, and he sat down and he says, you know, what do you want to do? And he says, you want to be a designer? You want to run a company? You want to be an art director? I mean, tell me, what do you want to do? And, you know, how do I know what I want to do at 25, right? All I want is to do graphic design, have a steady job, get a paycheck, and maybe rent an apartment, you know? Maybe have enough to rent an apartment. I mean, that's what I want to do. I mean, I can't even think of, you know, what I'm going to be 10 years from now or 20 years from now. But that's what he wanted to know. And he kept asking me that. Like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And he says, if you want to be if you want to be like me, he says, I'll teach you that. He says, if you want to work for somebody and be the best designer or production artist, and what he said is, I don't care what you want to do. I mean, it was almost like a fatherly talk. But he would say, there's nothing wrong with being a production artist. Now, back in those days, a production artist was kind of like the grunt, right? Everyone would start as a production artist and eventually want to work their way up into designer, senior designer, art director, creative director, own your own company. That's the corporate ladder of this business. And he would say, if you want to be a production artist, there is nothing wrong with that. And he said, it's really about what satisfies you. If you could live off, you know, you could be a production manager. They make good money. If you work as a production manager in an advertising agency, they make very good money. So there's nothing wrong with these titles. It's really searching your soul and asking yourself along the way, what do you want to do? What is it that you want to do? And move in that direction. And most of us don't know what we want to do, and we learn that as we grow over the years. So it's kind of a loaded question, you know, and I've always asked that to students too, many times. You know, what do you want to be? What do you want to do in graphics? And, you know, they give me the same answer that I would have given when I was in college. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. But Ray's answer to that would be, find out. Okay, keep asking yourself that question. As you continue on in your career, you know, there's going to be things that you like, things that you don't like, things that you want to do. Where do you want to work? What type of work do you want to be doing? Remember, this is a career, so this is the rest of your life. And move in that direction. And you know, it's hard. It's hard because sometimes it doesn't pan out that way. Uh, we all have to live. We all have to survive and pay rent and all of that. So, but anyway, as far as the ethics of design, there are a lot of other situations that will occur, um, uh, and I want to spend some time on copyright because copyright is such a big issue, and we'll talk about that in the next session. But that becomes a very ethical topic, and I work for a company out in Palm Desert where the owner, one of the nicest guys that I've ever worked for. You know, Cindy, you were saying that, you know, is a very nice person that you work for. Same with this guy. I mean, and yet at the same time, he just violated copyright, and that was very uncomfortable to a lot of us. And yet the question that we all had to ask ourselves is how you know unethical is it? Is it, you know, um, do we want to quit? Do we want to move on? And none of us were ready to do that. So we kind of followed his lead and did these things. And I have to say, it wasn't really a highlight of my career. But, we're faced with that a lot of times. You know, have you ever been faced with having to do things that you just went, no, you know, this is wrong, 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 you know?
Yeah, yeah. In the bank, when I was working in the bank,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of there was this one time where the lady that I worked for, because it was mortgage officer, mortgage assistant leader, and then there was mortgage assistant and everybody else. So they made me take from one file and photocopy it, take, and they made me do it. That's the worst part. And I was like, I don't want to do this. And then when it was photocopied, cut the name of the person because they had lost the paper. So they photocopied it too. I for all my life I was traumatized. I was like, I can't believe this. I was traumatized because
Mm-hmm.
I was putting a fake signature into a
Mm-hmm.
blank piece of paper. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like so freaking out for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I worked there for years, you know.
You know, I totally understand that. You know, I really do. Um, we're faced a lot of times with these situations, um, and that's kind of the foundation of what this class is about. It's about ethics. It's about doing the right thing, and I think we have a lot more resources now and a lot more information as far as what the right thing is. And remember, ethics is defined as, business ethics is really defined as what is acceptable practice in your industry. And, I think that's a good place to start, to ask that question. What is acceptable practice? Not necessarily what is the godly practice, of your industry, but what is accepted practice, legally, um, you know, morally is always going to be, there's always going to be people on the fence when it comes to that. Some believe this, some believe that. But is this, acceptable business practice? Is it legal? First of all, I mean, legality is something that, that you should follow, regardless. If someone is asking you to do illegal things, then that's where you should draw the line and say, no, I don't do that.
Now, one of the best people I've ever worked for in the Navy was actually, it reminds me a lot of your first boss.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Jeremy Davis. And I mean, again, the same way he would, like, for me, I was a pretty hard worker. I always have been. And so, like, I go there and, he starts making me like the assistant, like, duty section person. So, like, he's a duty section leader, and he made me work for him. In the beginning, he would ask me all these questions, like, I mean, dozens of questions, like, what's this, what's that, what's this, what's this? Figure it out. I need answers now. I need answers now. And
Right.
at first, I was like, "What's going on?" I had to get like write down half these notes, and didn't know what the heck was going on. And then like again, but like he pushed me, and he always asked me like he would ask me questions for like not today or tomorrow, but like 2 months from now. Like what's the status? I'm like, I had to know everything, and he really pushed me to kind of like understand like how the ship ran, like just actually functioned. And probably about like a month or two into working for him, it was to the point to where he would come up to me, ask me questions. I'm like, I already know this answer. Leave me alone, old man. And then he just like, it was actually more of like a friendship than like a boss. And he was like, we work really well together. And it reminds me of like how your boss kind of like was like a little bit like kind of almost like abrasive in how he talks
Yes.
to people. He
Yes.
was the exact same way. I mean, he would have no problem ripping you a new butt.
Mm-hmm.
And but the thing is like only if you deserved it. Like he wouldn't do that. He was a nice guy otherwise. But I remember when I first met him, it was to like I needed to relay information to him, and when I relayed the information, I relayed it wrong, and he
Mm-hmm.
knew it was wrong because he knew so he asked me like go back up and figure it out and come back down and tell me. I'm like, all right, cool, I did it. And I did it like 4 or 5 times, and I was like, okay, what am I doing wrong? You're not giving me any information. And so that once I asked that question, then he kind of like, okay, you asked the right question. Now let's go.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I like people like that. Because being nice is cool and also awesome, but like for me, I don't need it, and it's you tell me what you need. I'm a meat and potatoes type of guy. Give me what you need.
Yeah.
That's good to have like someone that's strong. But I mean, I had just gone out of Pralat and I was a
Mm-hmm.
girl and I was 21 years old. No, probably 23. I was 23. And I remember that I needed somebody to be
Mm-hmm.
nice to me because I had gotten out of the bank. And when I early on, I started working like at 17, 16 actually. So when I got into the bank, I got ripped to shreds. I needed someone to like take me in and say, "Hey, listen, what you're doing isn't so bad." Because when I worked for the bank, I was working a really hard job for years, and I anything I did was wrong to them. So I was like, "Why, if I'm doing everything so wrong, why do they keep me on board, right?" For years, and then they kept promoting me, giving me other things to do. So I'm like, so something that I'm doing is right, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So I lived in San Diego for such a long time, and then I moved over to Yucaipa. I don't know if you guys know that area,
Yep.
but I was like, well, I would hear so many things about Black College, so I just went in there, and I was like, okay, I'll just do graphic design. Wasn't a well thought out decision, but it turned out something that I really loved. So when I moved to Utah, I needed someone to take me under their wing, and I needed someone to be nice to me and to say, hey, listen, the things that you're doing. And it was actually such a really awesome thing because once I had that, I was like moving, like I was like doing the right things, like I had all these clients that she was giving me because she gave portions to everybody, but I was doing the right things, opposed to like do it again, do it again, do it again. Um, all the clients loved what I was doing, and it came so nice that one of my designs was actually published in the local newspaper. So I was like, I can't believe this is happening to me. For me, it was like I won the lottery having a nice boss, but it's okay to have a boss that rips you to shreds. It's okay when you have a boss that's so loving, you're just like, this is where I want to be. I want to be in this type of, and it was kind of like a newspaper slash graphic design place. So everything I was doing was right. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, I chose, this is what I want to do. I want to do graphic design for the rest of my life. So when I just came back for a refresher this time, like I know, and then the reason also too is that they moved to Ohio, but they have a branch off here in Hesperia, here in the high desert. So I can just
Mm-hmm.
go back. It just seems like it was for me. Graphic design made it for me.
Yeah. Well, from a managerial standpoint, I have a couple of real quick comments. Yes. Uh, you know, one of the things that I've learned over my career as a teacher has I think everyone should be a teacher at one point in your life. Uh, as a teacher, what's really important to us is to understand our students' learning styles. Um, and not everybody has the same learning style. Uh, and some people, like maybe Ruben, you're more into, someone telling it to you straight. Give it to me straight. I don't care. I could take it. I want to learn. Tell me where I'm going wrong. Maybe somebody else is more like, well, I would rather be, have someone tell that to me in a more nurturing tone. You know, I think a lot of it has to do with how you're brought up, what you're used to in your life, how you handle instruction, and a lot of times as managers or even as teachers sometimes, especially beginning teachers, we don't really understand that. It's like, this is what I remember. This is how I was taught. This is how I think it should happen. And we devoid ourselves from how, someone is learning, how someone is receiving that information. On jobs, a lot of things that are lost today are training. We're thrown into jobs with no training. I mean, I remember when I started, there were very nurturing people. I mean, they were tough and they would tell you, what to do, but at the same time they were teaching you how to do things rather than just throwing you in a situation, making you sink or swim, as they say, and then reprimanding you for making the wrong decision, and yelling at you and having this tone like, what's the matter with you? I mean, that's common sense, right? Why did you do that? But they didn't teach you. They didn't train you. Also, there's another perspective from different cultures. And I think culture is something that we have to understand. We have to understand that not everybody comes from the same culture. Like, for instance, last night I was watching a video on YouTube about working in Japan. Okay, what is it like to work in Japan? And in Japan, you would be reprimanded in the office in front of all of your coworkers. Okay? I mean, imagine that today, standing in your job and your boss comes in and just is ripping you a new one in front of everybody. Right? That would be unheard of today for you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, okay, at the same time, what that means to Japanese is that your boss actually cares about you, if you can believe that. It's like yelling at your kids, right? You always heard your mom say, I tell you that because I love you. And in a sense, that's true. In other words, when you get reprimanded in a job in Japan, it's because your boss still believes in you. They still believe that you have potential to learn and get better. Many of the employees were saying, when your boss suddenly doesn't say anything to you anymore, that means they've given up on you. They just don't think that it's worth even saying. Now in Japan, they don't fire you because you don't get fired from a job. They just keep you, and yet they kind of keep you and categorize you and say, okay, well, this is, these are the unproductive people. They're never going to learn. So we'll just, we can't fire them, but we'll hold on to them. So in a sense, getting reprimanded is kind of like, okay, I'm still thought of, I guess, as, someone special here.
That's the dilemma I have when it comes to working, because I've worked a lot of construction, just whatever jobs, work Navy, and I can, if you're telling me if you can reprimanding me, like saying this is what you did wrong, you need to do better, blah blah, that's fine. But as soon as someone starts like yelling at me, my brain, I'm not sure about you guys, but for me, as soon as someone like crosses the barrier between reprimanding and then yelling,
Mm-hmm.
and like I've done it like 4 or 5 times to like my bosses, and to where they instead of like yelling, telling me that this is a problem or whatever happened, they just start screaming at me, and I go, "Hold on, who the hell are you talking to? First of all, I know that I'm your employee, but I'm not your kid. You're gonna talk to me like a man. This and that, blah blah blah. Not gonna happen." I mean, I told that to my general manager at Tough Shed. He's like, I mean, he's like my boss's 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 boss. He was yelling at me because someone did something wrong. And I'm like, whoa, 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 give me a time out. If you're gonna talk to me, talk to me. If you're gonna get mad at me, get mad at me. Do not yell at me. I'm not a kid. I'm not a kid. I'm not a child. I'm not your child. I was like, so fix that, and then we can keep on going.
Yeah, there's a level of respect that has to happen in all of this.
And see, that is why I quit the bank, because I mean, okay, true, I do have a nice, I guess that's the word, nice, because I've worked with kids, and I've, like I said, I worked for the library, and I also worked for the school. So a lot of my graphic design stuff has to do with kids, because I love them so much, and I understand that form of teaching and stuff like that. But when I worked for the bank, seriously, I didn't know that I had the capacity to have patience, or to draw, or to do typography, or do all the stuff that I was doing. They make you in the bank. Now, in the bank only, in the mortgage side, I don't know about any other department like the escrow, whatever. They make you feel like you have no option. This is it for you. Like, you came in here, you're not getting out of here. And so I had a problem with that, but I would do my best. And then I remember this one time, one of my bosses, and I don't need to say what bank this was. It's a iffy bank anyway. Everybody knows it. She threw a archive at me. She took a file, a physical file, and threw it at my face.
Oh wow.
And then another moment, what she did, and I still stayed around because I was a young kid and I was like 20. I was like, this is an office job. This is as good as it's going to get, because they had me in that mentality. She took another file, another piece of paper, switched it over, and we saw her on camera do that. So the lead said, Cindy, don't overreact, but this is what she did. Of course, I was a young, stupid kid, so I overreact. They didn't fire her because she was making tons of money. That's what I didn't understand back then. People that made tons of money weren't going to get fired. The people that were going to get fired were the people that were the victims. So me going out and saying blah 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 blah, why did you do this? The boss just said, okay, Cindy, don't do this because she's the big roller. And I was like, so then there is no justice. And I think I stood around for like 3 more years in that department. You know, it's like, oh, okay, you did so well this year that we're going to advance you to 2 steps higher. But they treated you the same way. So I said, at some point, I was like, okay, I can't work here anymore. And so that's when I went back home, and I started doing Platt College. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm actually kind of creative, even though I knew I was, because I used to paint and everything. Moved over to Ogden, Utah, and I was like, all these people were like, yeah, you're coming from California. And that was such a cool thing for them, that I was a graphic designer from California, because in Salt Lake City there's so many graphic designers. And that's when I got my job, my first job. And like, oh, I don't have to get murdered to do everyday job. And coming to work was actually a pleasure. Like, I love going to work, and I was like, give me more stuff to do. And everybody got along, and we had like pizza together. There was like a big family, and we were just like, it was really nice. I really and then that's what started my career, working with kids and people. I started working as a graphic designer for Cali Mesa Library, and then for little libraries, children libraries, and that got me into school, like the school setting. I was just like, I can't believe I was so stupid, like thinking that the only thing that I could do in life was bake. And I remember going to work every day at 6 a.m. and I had to clock in at 8, but I felt like I had to go in at 6 to make sure everything was done. I was like, I was murdering myself for nothing.
Yeah.
That's why I got out the Navy. I mean, not so much in different circumstances, but the Navy was, just, it was terrible, because of the environment it breeds. I mean, it breeds that like office environment. You said, like, it's just, people are mean and ugly, and it's like they'll still say be nice to you.
Funny, and I don't know if the Navy was like this to you. I don't know if the Navy was like this to you, but they would tell on each other.
Oh yeah, it's a bunch of snitches. But it's like yeah, it's a bunch of it's again it's what it is it's a bunch of people that are trying to get one up on you, and because at the end of the day, it's all about evaluations and this and
Yeah,
that. And I was like, you know what, dude? I was like, the Navy that I wanted to join was the one in the '80s or the '70s, where a bunch of bell bottoms and a bunch of dudes with mustaches beating each other up. That's what I wanted to be. On my ship, we actually had a boxing ring. It was like we had boxing gloves, and it was sanctioned by our captain. And yeah, we would go up there and we beat the hell out of Marines. And I hate the Marines. I don't care what anyone says. Marines are a bunch of dumb monkeys, and I hate them. I hate them. But uh, but like we would go up there and we'd box, and that was like the best time I had. And it was just like I'd go back down with a bloody nose, and it was just like, hey, I hate this guy. And we beat him up. Like we would do that all the time. There's some people like that guy Davis I told you about. He was the type of guy to where if I had a problem with him, I would go into the room, lock the door, and tuck my collar in, hiding my rank, signifying saying, hey, I'm not talking to you as a person below you. I'm talking to you as a person. Put your rank on. And then we would go and we would go at it and disagree on whatever. And after that, we're like, all right, cool. And then we'd be buddies again. And it was just, but at the same time, I lived with these people. You live on a boat with them, floating in the ocean in the middle of nowhere for 9 months at a time. I mean, I don't care who you are. Sometimes the only solution is to box. And I know that I'm not even kidding. Like I've done that before, where hate each other's bones, and then after just punch each other up, and then you're just like, I feel so much better now. You want to go get a drink? Yeah, let's go get a drink. It's like
I think that's even somewhat normal. Like we all were girls. Can you imagine?
Oh no, see, yeah.
We were all girls, and everybody was like,
oh my girls were the meanest on my ship, man. They could box.
They were so evil. That's all I can say. Like they all had kids, and so I didn't realize later. Like I was like, how could that happen? They were all like, all so evil, and they all wanted an account, and I was like, oh it was bad.
I think that's one of the reasons why I kind of gravitate towards graphic design. Because there's some level of cutthroatness to it, but at a certain level, like at the end of the day, it's like that's not what it is. It's not about being like screwing over your partner to get ahead, because at the end of the day, you need that person. Like I know I'm not the greatest illustrator. I can say that for a fact. But I'm not going to screw over an illustrator because I want to get ahead of them. I want to work with this person. It's more of like a team, group environment. I love working with people, like kids, not so much because they make me mad. But working with like other adults and like collaborating and like bouncing ideas off of, I love it. And I'm a people person myself, and I can talk for hours.
I think you guys are going to like love graphic design. I've gotten a little piece of it for a few years. Super awesome. I love being a graphic designer. Like most people are like, okay, she's a girl, because it's a guy-dominated society, graphic design. But they're like, she's a girl. But I love so much working as a graphic designer, and there's so many aspects of it that I already know where I'm going. At least I have that. Where you guys, I can see you guys working in Manhattan or Tokyo or like big design firms, but I already know what I want to do. I want to work for the library, make a lot of graphic stuff for kids and stuff. I just love working for kids because they think, they're like, oh, Mrs. Chavez. That's the first thing. And they give you a sign of respect. Like, Miss Chavez is here. And it's like the cutest thing. And you're just like, thank you. Yes.
I think, for me, the thing that I've always, that's cut through all of this stuff, all of these things that you guys are mentioning and that I experienced in my career. I think what cuts through all of that is when I ask students why did they enroll in the graphic design program at Platt College, many people say because of the art. And although art is not something and art can be defined in many ways. Ruben, you say that you might not draw that well. That's not necessarily art. Art can be typography. Art can be many things. It could be the art of solving problems, But for me, design is something that, I've always loved. So no matter how tough things get at work, no matter how crazy people are or tight deadlines, I always look back on what I did, what I produced. And that is the most satisfying thing ever. And that's what kept me in this business for, for umpteen years. I also want to say one other thing about, and then I'm going to sign off here, is one of the other things that Ray used to say is that I took to heart, and that kind of made sense to me later on, is we're all looking for, a lot of us are looking for this utopian type, position, job. And I mean, we understand that there's good things and bad things, and there's going to be pressure here and there. But Ray used to say that it's always good to be a little on edge every day that you go into work. Not on edge, but a little bit nervous. Because that little bit of nervousness, that little, concern about, gee, am I going to make this deadline, or is this going to be good enough, or am I going to, am I going to pass the approval of this or whatever? He said that's going to make you sharp. And just that little bit of nervousness is good. You ever hear athletes say, no matter how good they are, they still get nervous before a game, right? And that's a good thing because that keeps you sharp. You don't want to go into a situation where you're completely comfortable every day. And that's what he was, trying to say. And I was kind of like, at the time, I was like, well, why not? I mean, why not? And I now understand what he meant about that, is that it's that little uncertainty, that's a good thing. So don't think that, there's always going to be stress here, but that's what's going to make you overcome. Every time you think about, oh man, am I going to make this deadline? You end up making it, right? Because you're worried about it. So just keep that with you. That's okay. It's okay to be a little nervous before the game. Okay. I will read the discussion question. I'd like you to make your comments on that, and then we'll meet again on Thursday. And I want to talk about copyright. Some
Sure.
copyright. Alrighty. I'm going to sign off, and so I'll see you guys on Thursday. Thanks for your contributions. I appreciate it. It's great hearing your stories. That's what this class is about. It's a lot of dialogue and conversation. I want you guys to, and you have lots of stories to tell. So we all learn.
Unfortunately for me, I don't have any.
It's okay. You're learning. You listen to our stories, okay? And later on, when you have stories, you'll go, I remember that. I remember that. That's why I love this class, this business ethics class, because it raises so many things that we need to talk about. Yeah. All right, you guys. Take care.
See you later.